welcome back to my channel. So here I am. It's kind of late in the day. I mean, like, it's sunny outside still, but it's starting to become nightfall, nighttime, dinner time, really. Anyway, I was just doing a bunch of homework, and you know, like, my homework consists. I have class. No duh. Finance, international finance to be correct. If any of you, of course I had to add this, right? If any of you are into finance, okay, here we go. I'll go on my totem pole, my soapbox, because like I am a music therapist. Music therapy is very subjective, it's creative, it's everything opposite finance, let's be real here. Even the skill set, like, all you're doing is you're reading articles and everything's very subjective. Even the research articles are on the more subjective side, and people try to sort of morph the truth in music therapy research articles because, like, you know, you spent all this money trying to do this project, and like, what are you gonna say? It like didn't work? Like, no. Every article, it seems like there is either a great response, or there's a little response, or there's some difference, but there's always like some sort of response. It's, you know, it's always, yeah, music therapy is great and it works wonders and it's amazing, and it is. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little biased, obviously. Spent 5 years studying music therapy. But I will be honest, finance is the holy trinity. Finance, accounting, economics, holy trinity, right there. Everybody needs it, everybody. I'm sorry, like, music therapy is great, but if you can do music therapy, you could totally do any type of math, really. Accounting, economics, finance. Anyway, I decided finance because it was only like 3 classes to get a graduate certificate, and now I'm taking international finance, and it's rough. It's really bad. I do have one of the top. I'm very smart, so I do have the top grade in the class. One of the top in the class. But it's hard, and like, usually, like, I'll be honest, because I'm not gonna like brag and be like, yeah, I have the top grade in the class and blah blah blah, and then I'm gonna move on. Like, no, I'm gonna be honest and tell you that, like, usually it's very easy for me to achieve an A, and it's because I'm a music therapist. Have emphasis on therapist, okay? I know how to read people, and I know how to give them what they want in a very efficient way. So, I mean, in undergrad, there were times, because music therapy is very subjective, there were times that, like, I wasn't able to provide the best of what this person wanted because the grading was on the subjective side. But most of the time I'm able to figure it out, and I'm able to kind of like beat the system. But that being said, it's more deductive reasoning skills, not necessarily the content itself. So it does, when you think the way I do, it does kind of harm you. But as a bachelor's person, I mean, not to be rude, but when you get your bachelor's degree, it's almost like you got the crust of the cake. You got the crust of the pie crust, okay? And maybe a little bit of, depending on where you went to school, maybe you got a little bit of the inside, but yet you didn't. Like, you don't have the whole pie. That's what a master's is for. So it was very easy to kind of like skate my way through, and I did put a lot of work into my bachelor's degree. Like, don't get me wrong, I spent most weekends studying, and it sucked, but I didn't really study efficiently, and I didn't want to, and I didn't have to. So there you go. Now finance, and when I say like study efficiently, I mean like using learning objectives, which we're going to go over on this channel, how to use learning objectives for your courses, because in music therapy we had them, but did I use them? No, because I didn't need to. I didn't need like to go through all that extra effort to get a good grade. I could skate through and get a good grade. And then same like with rewording. So like if the topic is brought up, you reword it in order for yourself to understand. That was another thing that I didn't have to do in undergrad. Like I could memorize it like ice cold, not grasp it, and still pass. So anyway, now we're in now like finance is a little bit different because you don't really have to memorize anything, you just have to understand, and most of the stuff you have to understand is like you're reading it from a spreadsheet, you're reading it from a formula page. So it is a little bit more abstract, but it's not as abstract as if, you know, you're working in a lab like I am. So I guess I got a little bit, I got all of it. So anyway, back to the story here. So the ethics, we're going to talk about ethics of music therapy. That's what's in the title, or ethics I should say in general, because there's so many different ethics out there. So before I dive in here, believe it or not, I did want to become a lawyer back when I was 12, and the reason why is because I really like to read, I really like to argue. They made a lot of money. If I did go into law, I probably would go into divorce law because I find that the most interesting. I like learning about family dynamics, and I took a course actually in college about marriage and family, and it was kind of more, fell into the theology department, which like worked for music therapy because at the time I was trying to get into the nursing home sector, and that's all about marriage and family from a theological point of view. But I did like want to do divorce law because I think there's a lot of drama in divorce law. There's a lot of underlying factors, and I wasn't good at this at first, but like now working in the medical field, I'm able to take all of these factors and kind of narrow it down to the primary reason, like, you know, for the visit or the primary concern. And like, anyway, so I developed that skill in medicine, and then I was like, well, I don't want to use this skill in law, I want to use it in medicine. But even music therapy, like, you don't really get thrown too many issues because usually you figure out what the client needs to work on, not the other way around. Whereas in medicine, the client comes to you and is like, I want Adderall. And you're just like, why? Why do you think you need Adderall? Did somebody tell you? Like, you know? Anyway, though, so ethics is in like everything, believe it or not, and it's one of those things that we don't really talk about in general society, but it should be talked about and it should be learned about. So of course I had to do business ethics, and then medical ethics. There's so many different ways. I mean, I worked in the emergency department, I worked in a rehab, so obviously I had like ethics in particular to those populations. I did infection control in regards to private practices, outpatient infection control, dental infection control. And then there's like, you know, there's always a little underlying ethics in there. But I think music therapy ethics and music education ethics is like really it's really stressed in the field, and it's probably one of the few ethics that's actually brought up outside of the field. Like in general conversation, in like conference conversations, coffee meetings, like I feel like music therapy ethics is brought up a lot. And I'm going to tell you guys a little story time. So me, so I don't come from money, aka the poor doctor, duh. And my family, they, it looks like we're rich because we're white, but we're really not. And it's mostly because, like, a lot, even though, you know, I'm third generation here in America, we had a lot of people in my family that didn't speak English for a really long period of time. So even though, like, 3 generations were working, you have to remember that, like, okay, only, you know, 40% of those people had bachelor's degrees, and, like, you know, they had to pay for everything. They had to pay for the other significant other who didn't have a degree. They had to pay for the kids. They had to pay for the grandparents and X, Y, and Z. So, like my grandma, for example, she was a teacher, but she was the only one in the family who had a real job, you know, and then her husband, he just did, like, some side gigs here and there, and then she had the whole old country, all of the ancestors were living in our house, because that's what, you know, that's what Middle Easterns do, which is still to this day, it kind of annoys me when, like, family live in your house, because, like, I think it affects the family, again, I think it affects the family dynamic. Like, who are you? Are you a daughter? Are you a husband? Like, for me, am I a daughter? Am I a wife? Am I a mother? Like, am I a granddaughter? Like, it just messes up, like, I don't know, it just messes up who you think you should be instead of who you want to be. But that's not the point of today. So, anyway, so we don't really have a lot of money. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And and so when I was in college, of course, we didn't get that much financial aid because my brother and I were going to college at the same time, and that's what FAFSA does. So I needed to get a job. And junior year of college, like, I still had a lot of credits, but I didn't have to do ensembles anymore because I already met those requirements. So I had a lot of nights free, and by nights I mean like that 6 to 9 time frame that usually an orchestra rehearsal would be. Like, I had that now free because I didn't have to be in orchestra for credit anymore. Then lessons, you know, you don't really have to do private lessons like after 4 because your class schedule is kind of all over the place. So you could have private lessons at like 8 in the morning, like before class, or you could have them like at lunch at 12, you know. So anyway, so that's what I did, and I was able to get most of my coursework done by 2 to 3 days out of the week. Not every, because I always had some sort of stupid night class or some 3-hour course that went into like 7, you know what I mean? So, but at least 3 nights out of the week I had free. So, I started getting a job. Now, again, I went to college in a very wealthy area, and I didn't know that it was wealthy when I was like going to school, because that's all I was doing, like living on campus, going to school. But then when I started to look for jobs, I realized that this is a really wealthy area, and like I have the option to get paid minimum wage, like work in retail, work in fast food, you know, do like, I guess, a mind-numbing job, and make like, you know, minimum wage, 10 an hour about, or I had the potential to work at a higher paying job. And I chose higher paying job because that means that I could work less hours, and that was kind of the goal because I'm like going to school. Anyway, so I got a job teaching private lessons, and it was like my first like music job. Oh my gosh, it was really exciting, and they paid a decent, like, it wasn't the best because you were a private independent contractor, you were technically freelance. I did have to drive pretty far. I had to drive on the Schuylkill, which always has traffic. I had to drive like through the really rich, nice suburbs of Philadelphia, where gas prices are pretty high, but all the roads are paved. And that wasn't really that close. I mean, like, it was close to the school, it was close enough, but it wasn't like 5 minutes down the road close to school. So anyway, so that's what I did to get money. I taught private lessons, and it was great. It was really exhausting. I wouldn't recommend it in long term. I would recommend driving to teach private if you're a music therapist, driving to teach private lessons only part-time, like if you're in school, or if you're getting your master's, or if you're saving for a house and you need extra income. Like, it's great, but I would not recommend full-time because it is way too exhausting, and you have to have so much energy when you go into everybody's house and everybody thinks that, you know, you're just going to their house and you didn't see 5 people already. And it is a lot of wear and tear on your car too. So again, like, it's not the best, but it's good, especially, like, it's a good part-time job. I surprisingly enjoyed it a lot. I didn't think I would. But yeah. So anyway, so like, that's what I did, and it was great for the time being. It really worked with my schedule. My families were like wonderful. But my professor didn't like it, and the reason why she didn't like it is because it wasn't ethical. Well, the reason why she didn't like it, and the reason why she stated it wasn't ethical, was because here I am, a music therapist, and I'm teaching private lessons, okay? And I have clients with developmental disabilities, and that often is what happens in music therapy, that you get kind of confused. People think that all you are is, you know, a music educator with special ed certification. That's really what a lot of people think of music therapy. They think like, oh, well, you can teach a choir of like 1 million people with developmental disabilities, you know, oh, you can teach a child with autism. And it's like, that isn't music therapy. You know, music therapy is actually like a more medical approach. It's a more clinical approach. It doesn't have anything to do with teaching. You know, if you are a music therapist teaching a group, it's for a therapeutic goal. It's not necessarily to teach them how to play an instrument. But a lot of people don't know that, especially fellow musicians, which is kind of surprising to me that like nurses sometimes know more. Like, they don't know that much, but they know more about music therapy than like a music education person. It's kind of strange to me. But anyway, so that's why she didn't think it was ethical. And she's right. It probably wasn't. But was she going to give me the extra $200 like a week that I was making because this isn't ethical? No, she wasn't. So I did it anyway, and I actually really liked it. So there you go. Now moving on to more important music ethics, music therapy ethics. Of course, we got to talk about the board certification. The board certification exam. Dun dun dun. That stupid exam. I don't like tests. As music therapists, we don't take tests, okay? Like, we go on auditions, that's the test. We do juries, that's the test. We don't, like, sit down in a room and take a 3-hour exam. Like, that's not what we do, you know? So, like, I don't think that the board exam is a good exam. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think it's stupid, and I think that something needs to change. Maybe I've said my piece, and I've backed it up with facts before, and I have given it to the board. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I have displayed how I feel personal, and it's not anything personal, it's just factual. It's actually more factual because, like, nothing really relates to me personally, and if they do get rid of the board certification, again, it's not going to affect me. Like, I don't have to take it, so I don't have to take it anymore. So, but I just think I think the board exam is so stupid. Like, you know, if you want us to get board certified, you should have us practice to take a board certification exam, just like the nursing students, just like the physical therapists. They all have to take this board certification too, and they practice towards it. When I got billing and coding certified, I took, like, I don't know, 20 mini quizzes a week we took in order to prep for the certification exam. Even like CPR, like that class is an hour and they still make you like practice, you know, for the exam. So like, I just think it's so wrong, and so I just don't like the way it reflects our field, the way that like you don't take a test at all as a music therapist, and then like in music therapy courses, of course, and then all of a sudden you're expected to sit for a 3-hour exam. It's just like, it's not right. It doesn't reflect our profession well. But that being said, as a music therapist, you do have to take the board certification in order to keep the credibility of our establishment. Because like, if you don't get board certified and you're a music therapist, then like you're going out and you're playing music and it doesn't really define or explain, like it doesn't show a difference. Like, because we have to be board certified in order to have credibility, in order to be advocated for, in order for people to fund us. Because if you're not board certified and you just walk in and play music, even if you know what you're doing, a common person isn't going to know. They're going to get confused. They're going to think you're a volunteer. They're going to think you're, what's it called? Music and medicine, or whatever that association is with the musicians that come in and play. Like, they're not going to know that you spent all this money and studied and wrote all these papers and took an exam, like, you know? So I get it. That's where like the board certification comes into play. But and music therapists are actually very, very great following the rules. Like, in business, like there are business ethics that you need to follow that most people don't do, and they get away with it. So, but music therapy, I will have to say that our field is great in the sense that like we do follow standard protocols, even though the whole world is out to get us, and even though nobody pays at sometimes you have to argue for money, which I've done several times. But all in all, we do follow our ethics. And we do take that exam, and we take it very seriously, and we do reach out for help when needed. Or you're like me and you decide that after you took the board certification, you're going to list complaints as to why we should change the system. I'm ridiculous, because that's literally what I did. Anyway, that being said, though, I'm here to help, and I hope continuing on, hopefully I'll be able to post more videos about how to study for the board certification and give you guys resources. Lately I haven't been, because I've been taking international finance. What? And valuation. I've been valuing companies left and right, and yeah. So but I will get back on to how to study for the boards, and so that way we can continue to follow the ethics. Before ending this video, I wanted to say a quote that really stuck with me, especially after my whole like freak out about, you know, taking a board certification exam after not taking an exam for 5 years. One of my favorite quotes, and it's actually from Gilmore Girls, and it happens, there's an episode where the two main characters are eating a wedding cake, and I never really understood this scene, because if you actually go wedding cake shopping or testing, like if you go to taste wedding cake or even the meal itself, they do charge you, and it's usually, well, like the meal, for example, usually it's probably like 20, I think it's like between 25 and 40, like it depends on like where you're going. My dad's in charge of the cake testing, just in case anybody was curious. I don't really like cake. So, but there was this one scene where they go to like taste test wedding cake at a different bakery, and And it's like, oh, is it ethical to be like tasting cake at this bakery even though so and so is gonna make the cake for you? And it was like, something, I forget like exactly the line, but it was something like, oh, if eating cake is unethical, then like I don't want to be ethical. And that's like the perfect line, because it's like, yeah, like, if not making money while going to school is unethical, then I don't want to be ethical. Or if eating cake is unethical, then I don't want to be ethical. And anyway, that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. So think about that if you have any issues or constraints, or doing music therapy over the camera, which should have been a thing for a long time now. If anybody comes up to you and says that it's unethical, well, you don't want to be ethical. Because, I don't know. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night. Watch some TV. Have something to drink. Because that's what I'm going to do. Okay, bye.